Hello, everyone. This is Whitney Will from Starhearth Astrology, and I'm here today to talk about the astrology of February 26th to March 3rd of 2024. Last week, we talked about the entrance into Pisces season. We talked about the thaw and the kind of discomfort and emotions that can come up around things losing their form as we move from Aquarius into Pisces and into this place of surrender. And I think a big piece last week in the stories that I'm hearing and the vibes that I'm getting is that this was a big full moon. So the full moon that we're coming down from this weekend, might at least talk about coming down from the full moon because it's such this peak of intensity. And then generally there's like a hangover from the full moon and the exhaustion of a full moon, because often that exhaustion is the overwhelm of the busyness and of so many things. And in Pisces, that's so many emotions. And then the full moon of Virgo says, like, right, reaches this breaking point and says, we have got to get a handle on this. It says, right, we need a plan. We need to organize this. I'm feeling really overwhelmed. Trying to swallow this thing whole, which is the Pisces way of doing it, is not going to work. So we need to figure this out a little. Now, what is very complicated about that, and where it might feel futile and hence even more overwhelming, is that Mercury, the ruler of Virgo, is in Pisces, the sign of its detriment. Not only its detriment, its fall or depression, because Mercury both rules Virgo and is exalted in Virgo. In Pisces, Mercury is both in its detriment and its fall, which means that what it really struggles to do is to understand how to break down and categorize and sort things, right? It's basically Mercury with very poor executive function. And if Mercury has a lot to do with our executive functioning, right, this is really problematic. It's the kind of classic ADHD overwhelm of like, I know I need to do something and I don't know where to start and I feel really overwhelmed. So getting stuck in this kind of emotional paralysis and intensity is very on the vibe. And that carries over into the beginning of this week with the interplay between the Sun and Mercury and Saturn this week. And so that's the chart I have behind me. Is if you're watching the video version of this on YouTube, I have the Sun, Mercury, Saturn conjunction at 9 degrees in Pisces. That's one of the key features of this week, right here in all of its complicated glory. But that's not the first thing that happens this week. The first thing that happens is a Mars square Jupiter aspect. And this, I think, if because it's in the days after the full moon, what we deal with is this like real, like, I need to take action, right? Mars, I need to take action towards something. It needs to be a big deal. Jupiter is in Taurus, wants it to have real impact and concrete solutions, but Mars is in Aquarius, thinking almost like too abstractly to even figure out something doable. So there's a tension there that is kind of underscoring the tension of the full moon and can feel this kind of overwhelm of like, I think another way that mm, Mars square Jupiter can show up is like, I need to do all of these things to make all this stuff happen. And yet I don't have the resources, or what can I reasonably do in the time? And so there's this tension between what I feel like I should do. Mars and air signs can get really cerebral and worried and struggle with anxiety. And Jupiter and Taurus is like, okay, I know you think that you need to like single-handedly make a ceasefire in Gaza. Yes, Yes, we need that. There is absolutely nothing in the world that justifies the murder of 12,000 children. But also, if you are going to do that and if you're going to be able to work towards that, you also need to feed your body and you also need to sleep. And right. And there's nothing, right. Not doing those things doesn't help you take action towards these larger ideals. But it can feel like this real push and tension around that. I think another big tone to this week, and I think this is kind of the downer of Wednesday, but also, I don't know, the deep meaning of Wednesday is a few things that happen. Three things. We have Mercury conjoining the sun, and then throughout the day, we'll have Mercury conjoin Saturn and the sun conjoin Saturn. And so they're kind of all wrapped up in this story together. And why I think that that is super potent is that, first of all, we've got Mercury conjoining the sun. Mercury is direct. So Mercury is on the other side of the sun from us. It's the superior conjunction. So Mercury is the farthest away from Earth that it ever gets. Now, this also marks the midway point between Mercury retrogrades. So by March 18th, we will be in the shadow of a Mercury retrograde. So we are halfway in between. Mercury retrogrades will enter the pre-shadow in about 3 weeks. So halfway in between Mercury retrogrades with Mercury conjunct the sun. Now, this is also a cazimi, so that can be helpful because, right, at this point, Mercury is so close to the sun and has been for, at least a week, I think more than a week, where we can't see Mercury and Mercury's combust. So Mercury is about in the worst condition Mercury could be for mercurial things, right? So we've got Mercury in its detriment, Mercury in its fault, Mercury combust. And now we're going to have Mercury conjoining the sun. So there's this clarity, there's a sense of, well, okay, I understand what the lesson of the latest Mercury retrograde is. It's brought me to this waypoint. I'm going to keep running with that, but pretty soon I'm going to get to the point where I need more information. I need to have another reflective come to Jesus moment with Mercury retrograde again. And it's going to be a really, really potent Mercury retrograde, this next one coming up. We are heading into very interesting astrology time for the rest of the year. We also have Mercury conjoining Saturn and the Sun conjoining Saturn. And this is very important, especially for the Sun, because last year when Saturn entered Pisces, the Sun was already in Pisces. And so they never formed a conjunction, even though Saturn has been in Pisces for about a year. This is our first synodic cycle of the Sun together with Saturn. And so it feels like we've had this very, very long preamble of kind of Saturn doing things in Pisces, but the Sun not coming into contact, which means that our kind of focus or our core sense of purpose not really integrating those lessons, perhaps, right? The moon has conjoined Saturn plenty of times, but the Sun is really going to get it. Okay, what is the project of Saturn in Pisces? And we'll probably see it in a few ways, right? But one of the ways that can be difficult to navigate and that really should be emphasized this week is the self-doubt that can occur. I was having a moment this morning, which is why I didn't get this recording out earlier on Monday. I was just having a lot of self-doubt and a lot of feelings of, just where you're not doing your best work. I had some difficult things happened last week and just really kind of doubting yourself and feeling overwhelmed and thinking about that in the context of the sun conjoining Saturn. And at this moment of thinking like, well, yeah, I'm not enough. Like no one is enough. Right. The kind of the truth of Saturn, the story of Saturn is that like, right, Saturn is that fear of failure. And we will all fail in the sense that death happens to all of us and that none of us are going to be perfect. And I think when we hold those truths as an individual, that feels tragic in some ways, right? I'm going to strive to be this thing and I'm going to miss the mark. But I think that there's a tremendous amount of mercy in that, right? Because it's in those gaps in your own understanding and your own competency that you make space for others and that you come into a deep appreciation of others. It's in the moments where there's mercy in response to a failure or forgiveness in response to a failure that we are made humble, not in a shameful way, but in a way we can understand and encounter ourselves in with a kind of innocence and realize that, right, there's no point of life where we ever grow up enough that we don't need help or assistance from anyone. We never are completely independent, wholly competent in ourselves in such a way that we do not need the compassion, the kindness, the attention, and the care of other people. Um, and so with the sun together with Saturn, we're integrating some limitations that I challenge you to find the gifts of not being responsible for everything. Thank goodness. And the liberation that exists in never being complete, right? We can come to moments of wholeness without ever being perfect. That can be a little bit harsh. And then the moon goes into Scorpio, which can also, right, like drive those feelings home. Now, luckily, Jupiter is right there. So on Thursday, the 29th, Mercury is going to sextile Jupiter. And on March 1st, the sun is going to sextile Jupiter. And I kind of see this as like Jupiter, right, who's the ruler of Pisces, kind of being like, oh, there. Well, yeah, that was some like harsh words. Those were some deep feelings. And again, right, humility comes from the same root as the word humus, like the soil. And Jupiter's down there in Taurus. I know you feel overwhelmed with Pisces. I know you're trying to swallow the grief whole. I know you're trying to understand how our oceans are really not in a good state, which I think is Saturn and the sign Pisces in the oceans, right? Like these kind of worries and fears and these holding these truths in an emotional and spiritual way, just how Pisces does it. The ruler of Pisces is in Taurus, like ground yourself, feed yourself, simple stuff. Like, yep. But here's the thing, like, we're here. We're gonna keep doing it. We're just gonna do the next right thing and then the next right. And that's what we're gonna do. And so there's a little kind of softening with that Jupiter. And then the weekend, Saturday definitely has a pick me up. We get the moon moving into Sag, which I think will feel a little bit more buoyant. And then on Sunday, we have Venus square Uranus. And this square, I think, is really interesting because Uranus is actually about at the position that Uranus was in during Venus's retrograde, last summer in July and August. And so Venus is really opposing that place. So it's almost like this check in. It's like, okay, how are we doing on the Venus? The stuff that we were working on last summer. Venus square Uranus is going to look for these kind of innovative solutions, right? They're already connected because Venus rules Taurus, where Uranus has been since May of 2018. Um, so they're working on solutions together. And in modern relationships, Uranus rules Aquarius. So they're there. They're talking to each other. I'm excited about that one. I think if this week feels heavy, that aspect should help kind of snap us out of it a little bit. Like, okay, enough crying. Let's have some fun because fun is essential to survival. And then we also get the third quarter moon on Sunday. So that means we are winding down towards our new moon, which we will have the the following week at the very end. Nope. Yes. The following week, we're also getting close to eclipse season. So our first eclipse happens on March 25th. So we're about a month away. So you might start feeling things kind of like fatey tingles. And so what that looks like is people coming into your life or having experiences, especially dreams that are telling these deeper stories and that resonate with this deeper sense that you have about the shape of your life and how it's going to go. This is like the pieces and the gems of wisdom and insight that are like nudging you towards the thing that you're working on in terms of who you think you need to become and where that effort is going and how you are kind of using the current of fate to move within your free will towards co-creating um, meaning and power with the universe inside you and the one outside of you. That's what I got. It's a heavy week, especially in the first half. Take care of yourselves, process emotions, but maybe also just hold space for them. Thank you for listening. Thanks for reaching out. Um, I will see you next week. Let this Virgo know how I can help you out if you need readings, insights in relationships, etc., etc. Okay.